It's Tzenes again from the Gaming Stack Exchange. Somebody sent me another replay, so I figured I'd do another breakdown. We'd go over some of the things they did right, some of the things they did wrong, talk a little bit about execution, and how to handle yourself under pressure. So we'll start this thing off. Kazz was the guy who sent me this video, and he's going to play against Savali, a Zerg. And Savali is actually going to do very different from what a lot of Zergs are doing. Instead of going macro and early expansions, he's going to go very aggressive, and we're going to see how Kazz handles that. Some of the things he does very well, some of the things he screws up on a little. And the reason I have the unit loss tab out here is so you can sort of see how effective various strategies are and how much Kazz is really suffering here. So let's start off. We notice goes for standard 9 pylon. It's actually a nice placement right here. Allows him to build things up by the ramp or maybe a little further back, which we see. And he's actually going to scout the 2 other locations before finally finding his opponent. I don't know if he didn't know Savali was Zerg, if he was random, or if he knew Zerg ahead of time. But Kazz actually chosen to stick his gateways back here. It's actually a tricky strategy, not to close off your choke, especially against a very aggressive Zerg. Actually, let's back up for a second. This is the first mistake he makes. So here we have Kazz. He's at about 14 supply, building his probes really nicely. He says, "Oh, I'm going to need a gateway, which is going to put over here, and a pylon, which is going to put over here." It's actually good pylon placement, so you get double coverage on these gateways. Taking out this early pylon doesn't take him down. And he actually has 175, so he's enough to build either one of these things, but he's actually going to build neither of them. And in fact, he waits around until he gets his resources a little higher first. And this is actually a mistake. What you want to do is you want to build them earlier rather than later. Earlier is always better. You see he double builds there. Oftentimes, you'll see players double build pylons because Protoss units are so control heavy, but double building in the case like this is actually not ideal. You want to build even earlier. In fact, he wants to be starting his next building right now. And he's not. And there's a couple of reasons he's not. Primarily because he's paying attention to his pro, which has finally found his opponent. This is a fairly early pool. I didn't look when it actually went down, but as you can see, he's only got about 11 drones here. These 3 are actually Zerglings, we'll see in a second, and he's morphing his queen. So there's a fairly early pool, and he's going to go fairly aggressive here. Probably a 10 pool or 11 pool. Meanwhile, a lot of minerals here, really need to be spending them. He'll start up a Zealot in a second here. And he actually has a lot of Chrono Boost, which he hasn't really been spending, or even getting more probes. So we'll get back to that in a second. But here's the key thing. Unless he was going for a specific 2-gate build, which is very unlikely since a 2-gate usually relies on cornering off a choke either here or at the natural, which you can't do on this map. He should really be starting up his 3rd gateway, an assimilator, maybe a cybernetics core. This money shouldn't be sitting around. So up until this point, Kazz has had really good execution. He's been staying out his probe before he has enough money for this first pylon, this first gateway. But as the game progresses, he starts to fall behind. We saw earlier this gateway and this pylon were built at the same time instead of one at a time as he had the resources for them. And again now, he has a bunch of resources he's not really spending. So he's starting to fall behind here. And this isn't, entirely unusual for many players lower levels. This is common, right? You haven't played the game 1,000 times. You're not used to it yet. You don't have these automatic impulses. Yeah, I should be building my 3rd gateway right now. It's understandable. And this is not what's going to kill him. Not at all. In fact, this is totally recoverable from, even though his opponent's gone for hyper aggressive, even though he hasn't walled off, even though he hasn't even started Zealot yet, even though he's not building whatever else he needs to be building, he's actually still in a good position. He's still been doing a good job getting his probes out, building up his economy. He still has, his 2nd gateway coming along. He has 14 of 26 supply. So he's actually in a decent place. But he's starting to fall behind. And this is a trend we're going to see as he progresses. And actually, these Zerglings are going to chase this probe home. I don't think the probe ever... Oh, no, it does make it. But, so, alright. Chrono boosting out the Zealot, and you see it's coming now. It's coming fast, because he really needs it. But still, a lot of minerals here. Like, really could be throwing down another gateway in here. In fact, he just started up the next probe. Again, you know, still tons of minerals. Really need to see a cybernetic square, at least an assimilator, so he can start getting up stalkers. Sending in this early Zealot is probably a mistake. He did have 6 of these Zerglings, and one of the problems with fighting uphill battles is that the more of a disadvantage you have, the even worse it is for you later on. By sending in the Zealot early, he's actually only going to kill off 1 Zergling and wound another, whereas if he had sent in with 2, they would have completely cleaned him out, and both would have survived. But it's okay, because he's got more Zealots coming, and they're going to come right on time. And we're going to see that he's been doing a pretty decent job, and it's going to pay off in the long run. And these 2 Zealots are going to chase off these Zerglings. Okay. Zergling crisis abated, right? Total losses, 100 minerals. Not the end of the world. Total Zerg losses, 50. So Zerg has a maybe 50 mineral, gain on him. But if we look at the economy, we have here 15 probes to a total of 10 drones, right? Way, way ahead. So Kazz is actually in a nice position here. This is where you want to be. But here's the problem. These almost 600 minerals here aren't getting spent. There's no assimilator still. One of the things you'll notice is Zealots are actually slower than Zerglings. They're about the same speed as Marines. And if you don't get out those Stalkers early, because Stalkers are a very, very fast unit before Speedlings come into play, they're not going to be able to adequately handle these Zerglings, and you're just sort of left with these slow Zealots. What's even worse is his opponent here has actually thrown down a Roach Worm. And one of the things Roaches do really well is destroy Zealots. They do a lot of things very well, but one of the things they do great is destroy Zealots, and it's a real problem. So he really needs to have that Cybernetics core down. He really needs to have that Assimilator up. He really needs to have about 100, 150 gas by now. It would be really nice if he could get a Sentry out right now to put a force field, stop Zerglings from coming in, especially if he had Speedlings, which is a very real possibility. His opponent could have Speedlings by now. We're about 4, 5, 13. A lot of Zerg players, especially if they went for an early pool, will have Speedlings now, possibly even expansion. So this is actually, starting to get into a situation. Even though he's ahead here, he's not really on track. The strategy's kind of fallen to the wayside. These early Zerglings have thrown him off course. And even though Kazz had, he started off with, decent execution, ignoring this, and he still has a great economy and everything, he's sort of off course. This is not his plan. And he's having a hard time recovering. This is what we call crisis management, right, or disaster recovery. This is like when Katrina's come in and knocked down all the homes. Okay, how do you deal with it while the storm's still here? How do you save as many lives? So, Zerglings backed off, and actually they're going to come back around because Savali does realize Zerglings are faster than Zealots. By the way, really easy way to handle this: have one of these guys chase after Zerglings, have the other guy come up into here, and wait for the Zerglings to come around. Here's the Cybernetics core, and the Assimilator finally took some time. Another thing that would be really nice is actually a forge right here. A photon cannon right here would totally cut off this entire area from Zerglings and prevent them from doing these run-bys. The Zerglings die very quickly to photon cannons. And then you can just put some Zealots over here.